Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, we begin with the stock at the heart of the artificial intelligence revolution. We're watching shares of Nvidia. They are up nearly 2% in early trading, but that follows a 3-day 13% rout that has wiped out $430 billion in Nvidia's market value. That's the biggest 3-day value slide for any company in history. Emily Rowland is co-chief investment strategist at John Hancock Investment Management.
I can't remember a time when one stock ever meant this much to the market. It's so remarkable. I mean, it's up 150% year to date, 200% over the 1 year period. So I think it certainly makes sense to expect some type of pullback in this name.
Now, despite the sell-off, John Hancock's Emily Rowland notes Nvidia is still up almost 140% this year.
Well, Nathan, tech is not the only thing on investors' minds. We get a key inflation report on Friday to close out the week, and that is preceded by Thursday's CNN presidential debate. Lori Calvasina is head of U.S. equity strategy at RBC Capital Markets and says both events could be equally important for markets.
It's not just about inflation this week. Political risk is starting to heat up. I increasingly think that's going to be a bigger issue both at home and abroad for investors to deal with in the second half of the year. And even on politics, we always tell people, it always sort of, the headlines capture us, it jerks things around. Remember that stocks tend to do well in any political environment, regardless of who's controlling the White House or Congress.
And RBC Capital Markets' Lori Calvasina warns there is a lot of good news already baked into markets, and if that optimism proves unjustified, there could be downside risks.
And Karen, as we gear up for Thursday's debate, voters are headed to the polls today for primaries in New York, South Carolina, Colorado, and Utah. Bloomberg's Amy Morris has a preview.
In New York, Representative Jamal Bowman, a member of a bloc of hard-left Democrats known as the Squad, is this cycle's first Democrat in danger of being rejected by his party's voters after his criticism of Israel sparked an effort to remove him from Congress. Bowman faces a challenge from Westchester County Executive George Latimer. In South Carolina, Mark Burns, a Donald Trump-endorsed pastor, faces Sherry Biggs, an Air National Guard lieutenant colonel, in a Trump-friendly district. In Utah, 4 Republicans, including one backed by the cryptocurrency industry, are on the ballot for the Senate seat of Mitt Romney, who has decided to not seek a second term. In Colorado, Representative Lauren Boebert is seeking re-election in a new district and is expected to win her primary over splintered opposition. In Washington, Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Amy, thank you. And this final primary day of 2024 is another day of debate prep for President Biden. He's been at Camp David since the weekend, huddling with aides to prepare for the showdown in Atlanta with former President Trump and beat back concerns about his age and fitness for another 4 years. Tina Fordham is a geopolitical strategist at Fordham Global Foresight.
Arguably, the bar is higher for Joe Biden because there has been this relentless kind of narrative about him being a doddering, old fool. And Trump comes out guns blazing with, what is really also a meandering way of expressing himself.
Fordham Global Foresight founder Tina Fordham says Trump feeds off the energy of a crowd, but Thursday night's debate on CNN will not include a studio audience. Our coverage of the CNN presidential debate begins this Thursday night at 8 p.m. Wall Street time with a special edition of Balance of Power with Joe Matthew and Kayleigh Lyons in Washington and David Gura in Atlanta. Listen in for the debate on Bloomberg Radio or watch it on Bloomberg Television.
Well, now to a major development in geopolitics, Karen. Wikileaks founder Julian Assange has agreed to plead guilty in a deal with the U.S. Justice Department. We get the story from Bloomberg's Ed Baxter.
Felony count of espionage will resolve a long-running legal saga that spanned multiple continents, centered on publication of a trove of classified documents dating back to 2010 and 2011. WikiLeaks statement saying this is a result of a global campaign that spanned grassroots organizers, press freedom campaigners, legislators, leaders from across the political spectrum, all the way to the United Nations. He will be in court on the Mariana Islands and then go back to his native Australia, not wanting to head back to the U.S. where he could face a lengthy sentence. Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Ed, thanks. Turning back to the markets now, Bloomberg News has learned Boeing has offered to acquire Spirit AeroSystems with a mostly stock offer. The deal values the key supplier at about $35 per share. The price marks a 22% upside to Spirit Aerospace's closing price on February 29th, the day before Boeing's takeover talks became public.
And Karen, Boeing's main competitor is also making news this morning. Shares of Airbus are down about 10.5% in European trading. The plane maker's warning it's experiencing a shortage on engines, aerostructures, and cabin interiors. That, in turn, is sabotaging Airbus's delivery plans.
And shares of Germany's Merck, Nathan, they're down about 10%. The company said it will discontinue development of the drug for the treatment of head and neck cancer. Analysts had estimated that drug could reach peak sales of $1.5 billion. This is the second high-profile drug failure since December for Merck.
Well, back here in the U.S., Karen, earnings will be in focus once again. FedEx reports after the close of trading. We get a preview from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Cost-cutting programs are likely to show incremental signs of paying off for FedEx when it reports fourth-quarter earnings. Analysts say easing year-over-year comparisons will also lift results, though the company continues to face weakened demand. Investors will be focused on guidance for the new fiscal year. That guidance will also reflect the company's shifting structure as it consolidates its express, ground, and services units. Analysts are looking for adjusted EPS of $5.34 on revenue of $22.1 billion. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Charlie, thanks. And Apple's artificial intelligence offerings have gotten more attention after the Wall Street Journal reported the iPhone maker is in talks with Meta Platforms about an AI partnership. Now, Bloomberg News has learned those talks might not have gotten very far. Sources tell us Meta approached Apple months ago about integrating its AI chatbot into the iPhone, but got turned down. We're told Apple doesn't think Meta's privacy practices are tight enough. And it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. And for that, we're joined by Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning and happy birthday, John.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Karen. Trying to keep that a secret. New York City is the world's most congested urban area for the second year in a row. Let's get more in this report this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
The global traffic scorecard from INRIX shows a typical motorist driving through the most populated city in the U.S. lost 101 hours last year because of traffic during peak commuting times. That's the most among nearly 1,000 cities around the globe. It cost the city an estimated $9.1 billion in lost time. New York City tops the list again after Governor Kathy Hochul earlier this month indefinitely paused a tolling plan that aimed to reduce traffic and raise money to update the city's aging transit network. Vehicles in downtown Manhattan drove at an average speed of 11 miles per hour during peak morning periods. In New York, Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
Overseas, France's president says far-right and far-left policies in the upcoming elections could spark what he calls a civil war. Here's the French leader defending his decision to call a snap election.
This choice was imposed. Did it make me happy? The answer is no. On June 9th, if there was anyone it hurt, it was me. If we follow your reasoning to the end, the country explodes or there is civil war. Did we do everything right? No.
Macron telling the Generation Do-It-Yourself podcast the national rally parties plan to tackle crime, focusing on people's religion or origins, is divisive and could lead to unrest. Federal judges in Kansas and Missouri together blocking much of a Biden administration's student loan repayment plan that provides a faster path to cancellation and lower monthly payments for millions of borrowers. The judges' rulings prevent the Department of Education from helping many of the intended borrowers ease their loan repayment burdens. And two NASA astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, are stuck orbiting Earth on the International Space Station. Now 2 weeks past their planned return to Earth, they remain aboard the ISS as Boeing and NASA engineers work to fix a series of helium leaks on the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. Global news, 24 hours a day, whenever you want it, with Bloomberg News Now. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Karen.
All right, John Tucker, thank you. And it's time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The 18th ever Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final. Odd way to get there, with Florida winning the first 3 games and Edmonton the next 3. Never trailed in those games, but never led last night. Panthers got a Carter Verhaeghe tip-in 4.5 minutes in. The Oilers answered about 2 minutes later, a Matthias Janmark breakaway. Only 1 goal was scored over the next 53 minutes.
Out to the right point for Ceci. Down along the boards, then Draisaitl. Fogle cuts out front. And a save Bobrovsky, and then it's pushed away out of harm's way by Kulikov. And the Panthers break it out quickly. Here's Reinhart at the right wing side. Reinhart to the right circle. A shot, and he scores! Sam Reinhart gives the Panthers a 2-1 lead.
WQAM, both teams with scoring chances after that, but the Panthers hung on, won 2-1, their first ever Stanley Cup. Bit of a surprise that Connor McDavid won the Conn Smythe as playoff MVP, not only on the losing team, but he was quiet in Game 7, did have 42 points in the playoffs. The drought continues north of the border. Since Montreal 31 years ago, Canadian teams in the final are 0-7. Mets and Yankees tonight, first of 2 from Citi Field, with Garrett Cole making his second start of the season, goes opposite David Peterson. Mets without Edwin Diaz. That ejection Sunday for sticky stuff on his hand comes with an automatic 10-game suspension, although Diaz could appeal. Red Sox stay hot, down 6-2 in the 8th inning. They beat Toronto 7-6. They've won 8 of the last 9. Nationals lost in 10 innings in San Diego. Giants topped the Cubs. It was their first home game since the passing of Willie Mays. All Giants players wore uniform number 24. The NBA draft begins tomorrow, and then comes free agency. The Knicks could lose 2 key players, Isaiah Hartenstein and OG Anunoby, who, as expected, declined his player option of $20 million. He can make much more as a free agent. Knicks want to keep him. With Anunoby in the lineup, they win 26-6. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Karen and Nathan.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager. A nearly 15-year legal battle is nearly over. For Julian Assange, the Wikileaks co-founder is on his way back to his native Australia after reaching a plea deal with the Justice Department over one of the biggest breaches of state secrets in U.S. history. This as preparations continue for the first debate in the rematch between President Biden and former President Trump. For more on the latest geopolitics, we are joined by Bloomberg News senior editor Bill Ferries. Bill, good morning. Obviously, this outcome for Julian Assange has been a very long time coming. How did this plea deal come about?
Yeah, it seems like news from a time capsule at this point. You know, for those of us who remember how this all started with the leaks that Assange put out there on WikiLeaks that he got from with documents he got from Chelsea Manning. It's been a saga. If you remember, Assange spent I think almost 7 years holed up in Ecuador's embassy in the UK. Before leaving and being arrested by British authorities as he tried to escape U.S. justice. So we're coming up on almost 15 years of this going on. The Australian government has long been pushing for his release. They seem to have worked some kind of an agreement with the Justice Department for Assange to plead guilty when he lands probably later on Tuesday, U.S. time, in the Northern Mariana Islands, the U.S. Commonwealth, and he will plead guilty to charges of leaking U.S. national security secrets. He will be immediately sentenced to about 5 years of time served, and he'll get back on his plane and he'll head to Australia. That should bring this all to a close, but it has been a long time coming.
And we had known that President Biden had at least indicated that he was in favor of some kind of plea deal to try to get this resolved after all this time. Is there any indication of any political pressure to bring this outcome to light?
Officially, the White House has directed all questions to the Department of Justice. They've said that there was no political involvement. The Australian government has only said that, the legal proceedings are continuing because Assange has not made it to Saipan and the Mariana Islands to this federal court hearing that will take place there. So we may learn more after he lands on Australian soil. We know that the Australian government has been pushing for this, not just through legal channels, but through political channels. So I don't think anyone will be surprised if we find out later on that there was a political component to all this.
We're going to find out later on, specifically 2 nights from now, how President Biden, former President Trump do in their first rematch debate this Thursday evening. President Biden's been putting a lot of time and effort into debate prep. How make or break is Thursday night for him?
Well, I think it's, at some level it's make or break for both men. There's a lot of pitfalls they're both facing, but certainly for President Biden, who seems to still be behind in a lot of the battleground state polls, he cannot really afford a slip up or a moment where he either appears confused or forgets something. So he is, I think the pressure is in some ways more on him. He is holed up at Camp David with about a dozen aides, including people like Ron Klain and Mike Donnellan. His lawyer Bob Bauer is going to be playing Donald Trump in the mock debates. But yeah, he still has a couple days of prep ahead of him. And he can certainly, it's like walking a razor's edge for both men, I think. President Trump back in 2020 had some notable stumbles or gaffes in his debate against Joe Biden at the time that may have hurt his standing. But yeah, this is something that a lot of people have been waiting to see happen for several years now. And it's the earliest debate I think we've had in modern presidential history, and it could be a defining moment.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.